It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of December 10th, 1999. We've got some notable movies here, including our first film that we have here, Frank Darabont's follow-up to The Shawshank Redemption, which is also based on a Stephen King story, which this is also based off of. Tom Hanks stars in The Green Mile. So as I mentioned, this is a story based off of Stephen King's '96 novel of the same name, and it follows a death row prison guard played by Tom Hanks during the Great Depression, who witnesses supernatural events following the arrival of an enigmatic convict played by Michael Clark Duncan. You also have characters played by David Morse, Bonnie Hunt, Sam Rockwell, and James Cromwell among the cast as well. And for Frank Darabont to come off of the Shawshank Redemption to do another movie set in prison may seem like a little bit of a been there, done that situation, but unlike Shawshank Redemption, this is a very different film, and a different film in a good way. This is a film that I think works because it does a lot of the same cliches I usually talk about in Oscar bait movies that can get really, really old pretty quickly, but this movie does it in a way where it definitely feels warranted. Everything about the moments that feel like cliche-riddled moments in movies like this feel like they're done well here because the writing and the direction here is well done. The acting is top-notch. I mean, Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan are phenomenal in this film. You can tell why Michael Clark Duncan got a Best Supporting Actor nomination for this, because he really is fantastic in this film. He's kind of playing a cliched character overall, but he's a character that you really do get behind. You can really buy into this character situation, and you really want him to have a chance to have at least a happy ending in his life, where he doesn't end up getting eventually murdered, or not murdered, sent to the electric chair. But yeah, Tom Hanks, it's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks will usually turn in a good performance regardless of the film he's in. And in this case, he does another good performance in here. The casting overall is very well done. There was a lot of complaints about the criticism, the length of the film in terms of the criticism. I mean, yeah, it's a long movie. It's about over 3 hours long, and at times it could get a little bit. There's times when you can really tell that they could have cut that out of there, but it never gets boring. It's one of those movies that you just get so invested in what's going on that you don't really mind the length of the film. And like we've seen this year, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, if you make a really good movie, it doesn't really matter what the runtime is. As long as you make a really good film out of it, we can buy into it. In this case, this is a film we can definitely buy into. It's a great follow-up for Frank Darabont following The Shawshank Redemption. And it's another really good adaptation of a Stephen King story. It's a very well-made film, boasted by two very solid performances by Hanks and Duncan. Can't recommend this one enough. I'm sure you've seen it already, but if you haven't, go see The Green Mile. It's definitely worth the watch. So with that said, let's move on to the complete opposite end of the spectrum with our next film, Rob Schneider in the comedy Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. So the story here is that Rob Schneider is a hapless fish tank cleaner who goes into business as a male prostitute in an attempt to earn enough money to repair damage he caused while house sitting for this other gigolo. And chaos and hilarity ensues, and I guess you could call it hilarity. I would call it. I don't think it's that funny. I mean, this is a film this is one of those weird films that at the time it came out, people did kind of enjoy it. I mean, despite the fact that the critics didn't like it, it did gain a positive reaction from a lot of people. But then as soon as the movie went on had a successful run, and then they tried to make a sequel out of it, which I'll never forget when the sequel came out. Like, they were hyping that one up to be the next Austin Powers. Like, this was going to be the next Austin Powers, and then that movie crashed and burned because you waited 6 years to make a sequel for this. If you made it in 2001 or 2002, then maybe it could have been a successful film, but yeah, this is not a good film at all. I mean, it's a bad sitcom, quite honestly. It's a sitcom setup where the clients that do, like, here's this Argentinian male prostitute who gets all these sexy women and then when Deuce has to do the same thing, he gets all these weird-looking people, an obese woman, a woman who has narcolepsy, a woman with Tourette's syndrome, a tall woman with like, if you're gonna do this, why not just go and grab the male prostitute is the guy's black book and just take some of their women? But you know why they won't do that? Because we wouldn't have a movie, which is probably a good thing. It's just not funny, man. Like, we've seen Rob Schneider can be funny if you give him the right material to work with here, but This was kind of the start of that downward spiral for Snyder, in terms of like when he became the leading star and he had to be like and he got control over the projects, and he picked some really bad projects. Quite honestly, this is just one of those ones where it's just kind of like, back then we kind of enjoyed it for what it was, but as the time went on, it got old pretty quickly. I mean, this thing did not have the lasting power that I think this movie wanted to, and I think when that second movie came out, it was just over and done with at that point, because everyone knew how bad Rob Schneider's comedies were up to that point. But this, going back and watching it now, it's just not funny. It's just not a funny movie per se. It's not that unique. It's not that inventive. It's not that enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. It's just not a good movie. It's just not a funny movie. I've gone back and tried to watch it, and it's just not worth it in the end. I don't remember one single funny moment from this movie that I remember. And even when I saw it for the first time back in the day, I don't even remember a whole lot that made it funny. I guess the only positive thing that came from this is that this director, Mike Mitchell, went on to become a pretty good director in his own right, directing stuff like Shrek Forever After. He did the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, the first Trolls movie, his most notable film being Sky High. He did the Lego Movie 2. He did Surviving Christmas, which is one of those so bad it's good type of movies. And we'll eventually get to that one when we get to 2004. His only other really bad film was Shipwrecked, the Alvin and the Chipmunks sequel, but it's the Alvin and the Chipmunks live-action threequel, so of course that one was going to be bad no matter who you got to direct it. But I mean, at least this director got better after this point with that one little blip right there. But that's pretty much all I got for you on this one here. This is a forgettable mess of a movie. Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. Avoid this one like the plague. So let's go ahead and move on to our next film. A couple of awards contenders, and you can definitely tell because they're going to tout out all the critical praises for this movie in particular. The Cider House Rules. So the story centers around Homer Wells, who lives in a World War II-era Maine orphanage run by a doctor who trained him, and his journey after leaving the orphanage. And it stars Tobey Maguire, Charlize Theron, Delroy Lindo, Paul Rudd, Michael Caine, Jane Alexander, Kathy Baker, Kieran Culkin, Kate Nelligan, and surprisingly Heavy D and Erykah Badu, which I did not expect from that. This is directed by Lasse Hallström and also written by John Irving, who also wrote the book this is based off of. And that trailer is very much Oscar baity in a number of ways, but the movie itself is actually really damn good. It's a film that does warrant a lot of the emotional moments of the film, and I think the acting overall is really, really good. I mean, Tobey Maguire is very good in the film. Michael Caine won his second Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in this performance, and it's a really good film. It's an effectively enjoyable drama. And it doesn't feel like it's trying to throw all the cliched little Oscar baity moments into there. It does it very so often, but never enough to the point where it really gets boring very fast. It's just kind of like, okay, you kind of earned it there. It's warranted when they try to do what they're trying to do here. And there's never a moment in here that felt like they're forcing emotions out of you. Like, everything that happens in this film is earned, and it does feel genuine. It doesn't feel like it's being crammed into you. It's a very solid film. I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it already. It's definitely worth the watch. The Cider House Rules. So, on to the next film. Tim Robbins' Cradle Will Rock. Now, this film is clearly trying to be Oscar baity. This is Tim Robbins who directed this film. I think this was his follow-up to Dead Man Walking, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's his follow-up to Dead Man Walking. It's actually the last film he directed as a whole. He hasn't directed anything since then. And you have the story about fictionalizing the true events that surrounded the development of the 1937 musical The Cradle Will Rock. It adapts history to create an account of the original production, bringing in other stories of the time to provide a social commentary on the role of art and power in the 1930s, particularly amidst the struggle of the labor movement at the time, and the corresponding appeal of socialism and communism among many intellects, artists, and working-class people in the same period. And it's not based off of Orson Welles' unproduced screenplay for The Cradle Will Rock, which was actually written in 1984 before Welles died, and the script was actually published in 1994, but that film had never been produced. Great cast overall. Hank Azaria, Ruben Blades, John and Joan Cusack, Carrie Elways, Philip Baker Hall, Bill Murray, Vanessa Redgrave, Susan Sarandon, John Turturro, Emily Watson. These are all really talented people, and it makes for a decent film overall because of the performances that are carrying the weight of the film. The rest of the film itself, though, it's pretty much your typical Oscar bait movie. It's a film that's trying to garner awards buzz and doesn't really feel like a lot of those moments that should be that should be forced on, or things that are trying to force an emotion out of you, should be there. But the film itself just really, it doesn't really do anything to make it stand out on its own. It's worth it for the performances on their own, but other than that, though, for a one-time watch, it's fine. But I really would have liked to see what Tim Robbins would have done after this as a director. He's directed 2 pretty good movies, Dead Man Walking and Bob Roberts, and this is kind of his worst film. But even then, it's not the worst film he's done. It's not a bad film per se. It's just not a great film compared to those other 2 movies, and definitely could have been a whole lot better. But as it is, it's fine for what it is. For a one-time watch, it's worth it, but it's one you probably never want to watch again. So that is Cradle Will Rock, and now let's move on to our last film, Kirk Douglas in Diamonds. So you have the story about a boxing champion, Harry Agensky, the Polish prince, who's now an elderly widow and a stroke victim, taking speech lessons and fear confinements in an old age home. He convinces his son Lance, played by Dan Aykroyd, and grandson Michael, played by Corbin Allred, to take him to Reno to look for diamonds he stashed, his payoff when he threw a fight years before. Lance doesn't believe the diamond story, but wants a last trip with Dad, and all 3 have father-son issues to work out. After some gambling, they head to a brothel where each needs psychological intervention from a prostitute, played by Jenny McCarthy. Then it's time to find out if the diamonds really exist, and if a road trip together can strengthen family bonds. And it's really going to depend on how you feel about some of the elements they take in here. I mean, Dan Aykroyd can be a really good actor. He has been nominated for an Oscar for his work in Driving Miss Daisy, and you've got some good talent behind him too. Lauren Bacall, Kirk Douglas. Jenny McCarthy, though, is the real big question mark of the film. It's a film like, this isn't as bad as some of McCarthy's other film works. Like, this isn't Dirty Love bad, but you can tell she's at least trying to act. I mean, she's acting with all these legends is in this movie, and she's fine, I guess, but she isn't doing like the thing that's going to make you go like, oh man, this is the potential to be a really good actress in the future. This isn't like Lady Gaga in American Horror Story, when everyone just realized, hey, this girl can actually act. I mean, because she's proven she can act later on down the road. But in this, with McCarthy, like I said, it's a passable role. It's nothing really spectacular. I think the real thing that carries the film is the fact that you have people like Kirk Douglas, Dan Aykroyd, and Lauren Bacall working off each other. I mean, for Kirk Douglas to do this shortly, I think this was just after he had that stroke where it really altered his vocals as a whole. In fact, let me see if this actually was around then. 1996. So yeah, it was about a couple of years after this. But for him to keep doing this and doing something like that, I mean, more power to him, man. He kept it going for a long period of time. And up until his death in 2020 at 103 years old. The guy lived to be 103 years old. And he had that stroke for like 24 years. He was still suffering from that stroke after 24 years, man. That's, I don't know what he was doing, but I'm hoping that this never happens. But if that day ever comes when I have a stroke and I have the chance to live that long, I need to know what kind of a healthy diet he had around that time, because more power to him, man. I mean, to have that for 24 years and live as long as he did, that's pretty impressive stuff for him. But, yeah, as far as the film itself goes, it's alright. For a one-time watch, it's okay, but it's not one you're going to want to pop in again anytime soon. So, yeah, that's Diamonds. So that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we'll head into the week before Christmas, and not many creatures were stirring except for one little mouse, Stuart Little. We'll talk about his movie. Robin Williams teams up with Chris Columbus for Bicentennial Man. Jodie Foster is involved with Anna and the King. And we also have Paul Thomas Anderson's follow-up to Boogie Nights, Magnolia. So 4 movies we'll look at next time. We'll delve into those in the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. Now, don't go too far away, because after I'm done posting this, we have a new Time About the Movies flashback. We're flashing back to September 23rd, 1988, with 6 notable films, including David Cronenberg's follow-up to The Fly, Dead Ringers with Jeremy Irons, Matt Dillon and Andrew McCarthy in Kansas, Susan Sarandon, Don Johnson, and Jeff Bridges in Sweetheart's Dance, Tim Daly and Kelly Preston in Spellbinder, Natasha Richardson, in Patty Hearst, and Sigourney Weaver in Gorillas in the Mist. So a star-studded week of films to look at over there, and we will delve into those movies right after this.